Hello, I'm Dana Levenberg, member of the Assembly for the 95th District of New York State. Welcome to my podcast series, Building Healthy Communities. My mission as a legislator is to build healthy communities in every sense of the word, environmentally healthy, economically healthy, physically and mentally healthy, all through the lens of equity. In this podcast series, I talk with leaders, advocates, and others who are helping to build healthy communities here in AD 95 and beyond, and share information and resources for local residents, news that you can use. We have a very important election coming up in November as we tape this podcast, with positions on the ballot at the federal level, including president and vice president, all the way down to local positions like county court judges and local board members. Since it is a presidential election year, coverage of this upcoming election is at the forefront. But here on the state and local level, we know that all elections are important, from the midterms to primaries and school boards and budget votes. Voting is your most powerful way to engage in civic life, but for many people in our community, the right to vote has not always been a given. Even today in 2024, we must stay vigilant to ensure the right to vote remains free, fair, and accessible in our state and country. Plus, we want to educate the next generation about the fight for voting rights and inspire each other to get out and vote in each and every election. In that spirit, I am excited to feature the Peekskill Branch of the NAACP in this episode, represented on the pod today by President Priscilla Augustin and Vice President and Civic Engagement Chair, Minister Micah T. Benson. Welcome, Priscilla and Minister Micah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It's great having you, and I love it. And if you could maybe just start by telling us a bit more about the Peekskill Branch of the NAACP and a little background on the history of this important organization.
Okay, will do. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Minister Micah, for joining us out of town. Safe travels. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for having us. I hope everyone is having a wonderful, blessed day. The general mission of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People is, our mission is to activate equity, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies and our practice that expand human and civil rights, eliminate discrimination, accelerate the well-being through education, economic security of Black people and all persons of color. Our vision, we envision an inclusive community rooted in liberation where all persons can exist in their civil rights without discrimination. Very much aligned to your mission, Miss Dana.
That is so true.
Yes, I pay attention. The Peekskill Branch has been around a long time. So just to give a little background history for those who do not know, this is the longest civil rights organization nationally that was activated in 1909. So there is a little history that if you research, it will say 1908 during the Rottingfield riot. People got tired of the lynching and other abuse that Black folks were going through. And those people were not just Black people who put together to create this organization. I want to stress it was white people who started this movement. And so from 1909, this became the longest living organization. Some of you know we are the baddest, boldest. I could keep going, but you know the lingo. But our job is to advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves, to ensure that they are people like us to represent, to advocate for their education, for their health, physical, mental, psychological, to make sure that people are economically empowered. So there's opportunity in the community to grow business, to buy home, become homeowners, because that's where you have that generational growth. Also, we also empower those who are disabled. We also advocate for peaceful community. We don't tolerate bullying. We don't tolerate abuse, because it's still a form of that trauma that Black people experienced years ago, and we're still experiencing the longevity of this trauma of having been enslaved and feeling powerless. But through this organization, we're able to gain the strength to do the work that is needed, so that we remain powerful, that we remain focused on our mission to ensure that those around us who need assistance with advocating for them, that we do it for them. 1937, Westchester started to get branches, and Peekskill was one of the first one to have their branch and instated in 1937. You could visit our website to give you more detail. It will let you know who were the presidents, and what the work was. So Peekskill NAACP has been a model branch for a long time. There was a time that they stopped because they didn't have the people who were called to do this job, because it's a spiritual calling, if you ask me. Some of you may agree, some of you may disagree, because it's volunteer work. You don't get paid for it. So something within you have to engage you to want to do this work. So in 2015, the branch was reactivated by Mr. Martin McDonald, and he served for a term and a half. And then Valerie Eaton became president. She served 2 terms. And presently, we are in the midst of our election as well. But this ends a term for myself and Micah. So we're the present team of the NAACP. I will pause here. I would like to give my first Vice President, Minister Micah, a chance to chime in.
It was 1909 when it was founded. There was a lot of violence, race riots, just because of the migrating Black community from southern states following the end of slavery and Reconstruction. So this time that the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People was founded, also the National Urban League and other, I think, fraternities and sororities were founded during this time to kind of provide a institutional basis for this new free Black community. And so, the intent was to create, using modern language, to create safe spaces for progress and uplift of Black people when there was very few in this country. So, yeah.
Absolutely. That's great. So I also know that the NAACP is nonpartisan. However, the organization does take positions or will take positions on policy. Can you share a little bit about how the decisions are made about, what you're advocating for in terms of policy?
So, as an organization, right, it is a Robert's Rules of Order organization, as I like to typify. And so it is democratic. It is voting majority rules, yay, nays, minutes. And so it is through a democratic process that the concerns of the members of the organization are levied and put in proposals that make up each year a legislative agenda that will come from the national office. And then each state office or state conference has their own guidelines or proposals that will deal with specific legislative agendas that each branch can bring to their legislative bodies, legislative representatives. So here in New York, one of the big policies that the NAACP was strongly behind is ending nicotine usage, and really flavored nicotine and menthol. And so that was a big on the environmental justice and health equity side for the NAACP to push forward in New York State. This might not have been, and it was on the national proposal, but different states might not have that as a top concern there. So, but that was for us because that's something that here in New York is a bigger
That
deal.
was
I
very
definitely.
controversial in the assembly, I have to say. I would also have to just add in from people of color, had both sides. It wasn't like a one shot, like it wasn't a clear cut direction on that particular policy, but it was fascinating because of the insidiousness, I would say, of nicotine products and menthol flavored products, and how they have had a negative impact on on people of color in particular, and how that then makes the decision to ban them difficult because people who may already have formed an addiction feel that now they're being targeted negatively. It's very interesting. Anyway, it's a fascinating topic,
But
and
yeah, I mean, but just to even respond with that, right?
yeah,
It's there's the health equity side, right? We're concerned for the health and livelihood for the people of color, and not so much um, getting stuff that people like, right?
yes,
So I think
yeah,
it's people can like a lot of things that are not always good for them,
yeah.
and I think it is through this kind of democratic process that we
Mm.
listen to our people. And right, there are plenty of people that I'm sure are members of the NAACP that enjoy a menthol cigarette and still are
Mhm.
advocating for these proposals because we
Yeah,
understand that it's about advancing the health of our communities.
absolutely. I'm just saying that there were certainly, even within the assembly, there were people who were taking both sides of an interesting issue, and I would have thought it was more clear cut, in my personal opinion, towards the NAACP position. So, anyhow, that is what I supported too. Um,
And we
so,
appreciate it.
hmm?
I said, and we appreciate that.
Yeah. Excuse me, I still have like a little leftover cold. So with the upcoming election in mind, what is the NAACP's position on voting access and registration?
Well,
So
there.
as I'll take that question.
Okay, because that's civic engagement, and I'll just add, if anything, well, just before Micah talks about everything that we've been charged to do. So I'm so glad you brought that question up, because this coming from our convention last year and this year, our charge is to ensure that we register people to vote. So that's been our work in the community. Our Minister Michael will talk more about the plans we had to put together, but our charge is to ensure that everyone that we know in our neighborhood, outside of our neighborhood, within our household, to ensure that they register to vote. And I'll come back about that when Micah presents what we've been doing in the community and outside of our community.
Yeah, I mean, on a specific level within Peekskill and neighboring areas, but really specifically Peekskill area, we've been doing some voter education forums because sometimes the biggest blockade between communities voting is the feeling of a lack of information or a gap of information between those that do vote and I who have not voted. That maybe some people know more than I do. So to try to reduce that gap to try to that might keep people at home, just doing voter information forums where people are welcome to ask questions. We can talk about just civics 101. What does a assembly person do? What does a senate do? What's the mayor's responsibility? Sometimes we aren't engaged in our community because we don't know who's responsible for what, and so when things go wrong, we don't know who to address. So just creating a more informed community when it comes to civics and the political processes is part of our goal. And then voting access and registration, the NAACP. Obviously, we support the Voting Rights Act and people to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We support any efforts to expand access to the ballots. So the way that we have Golden Day today, this year, with voting same day registration and being on the last day to early vote, first day to early votes, last day to register, coinciding, was a great achievement for us. But any type of measure to expand access to the ballots, the way that we were able to have no trying to think of what the
No
term
excuse.
is.
No excuse.
No
Absentee
excuse,
ballot.
absentee ballots. And so that was another type of procedure. I think nationwide, I know that like it would be a bucket list item for the NAACP would be election day to be a national holiday, right? Which would really take away the blockades between folk that might not be able to take off work on election day. So our position as the NAACP as an organization is that anybody that is able to vote should vote, because our democracy works when all our voices are heard.
And just to be clear, that includes people who are citizens, correct? Just to be clear.
If you are legally able to vote, you absolutely should vote. If it's the other way around, I think we do not want anyone that is not able to vote legally to
Right.
vote.
And I'm just underscoring the fact that is a requirement for legal voting. So anyhow,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But just and then to underscore and we are very much nonpartisan. When we ran, we've done some voter registration drives on National Voter Registration Day, outside of the Westchester Community College Extension Center. And we also partnered with other groups that were, so the Peekskill Extension Center and Ossining. And we had several folk, especially, younger people that are going to these colleges, registering for the first time. Happy that there were people providing that service there, because it was like something I had on my mind, but I hadn't actually taken the steps to do what might be necessary to make sure I was registered. So, I think people have interest, but
and now you can
you got to get to
pre-register,
them.
right? Yeah.
Register them. We actually brought them to the to the Board of Elections because we didn't want to mail them and have anything happen. So hand delivered to Orange County and Dutchess and Westchester and the Bronx. But right, it doesn't matter if they register as Conservative Party or any of that. We just help people fill out their ballot, the registration correctly, and get it into the hands of the Board of Elections.
That's awesome. Great. Priscilla, did you say you wanted to add something after Minister Micah?
Wow, Minister Micah just said it all. So definitely that's the work we've been doing. But also want to let those of you who are listening to this, if you're hearing it before on the 26th, on top of the work we will be doing on Golden Day, we have a candidate forum on the 26th at the United Methodist Church. I believe it's from 10 to 1, if I'm correct. So we invite you to come. Come and hear the questions that the public have to pose to you, and come prepared to answer as to why, as a voter, they should vote for you. Invest in you, because it is an investment. My vote is an investment in you to ensure that you're going to take care of my community and my needs.
Absolutely. So I think we kind of touched on this. You sort of answered this question already, but I'm just gonna make sure that we really got at it. As discussed in New York State, we recently enacted several measures to protect voting access and to ensure that it is easier than ever to cast your ballot, which includes this same day registration and voting on Golden Day, as you mentioned, Priscilla, which is October 26th for this year's general election. And also an option to vote early by mail, which I've already heard from many people they've already taken advantage of, and the John R. Lewis New York Voting Rights Act. Why do you believe these measures are so important? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. You've touched on it a little bit, but maybe you could just dive in a little bit more.
So, challenge the access to voting is not, historically hasn't always been there. And I think sometimes I was born in, I'm saying this in public. I was born in 1988, and so it's post the years, right? My grandfather helped, was on the school board in Ossining in the 70s, and so there's I think a bit of taking for granted this access to voting, and it being accessible and available. I mean, in our area particularly, we don't have long lines to vote. So I think even when we hear today about voter suppression, we don't see any real. I think it's not it's not as tangible, it's not as real to us. I did live 9 years in Georgia, and so like the longest time I've ever had to vote was like 2 hours, and it was a regular school board election, right? But it was still long lines in the county that I was in. So I realized the privileges that we have in New York as we've expanded the Voting Rights Act, voting access. I'm very proud that New York is a state that is moving forward, particularly as have not advanced the national John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So it really is, it makes me happy to be a New Yorker. But just historically, right, I think America did only have a very narrow subset of people that could vote, and that represented the interest and concerns of what our government took care of. And I think it's very important as a citizen for your voice to reach the ears of people that have power, and that tangible method is voting. Um, I know that
Absolutely.
we have a social media generation, and we love viral hot take moments. But at the end of the day, the viral moment inside City Hall doesn't change the situation. It just is a viral moment. But at the ballot box is where systems and things really shift. So
Sure.
making sure everyone can get access so that everyone's voice has a chance to be heard. I'm not saying that it will, and I think that's the other drawback is that we I think have a misunderstanding of participation doesn't, delayed gratification and all of these certain things. We just have a weird understanding that because I voted, it meant I was supposed to get something. Like we're very transactional, and civic life is not a transactional type of thing.
Right.
Community life
Absolutely
isn't.
not.
Right.
No, absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, if people have questions or concerns about their voting rights, do you have a place that somebody can call, or is there some place that you're directing people?
They
I
could
mean,
reach out to us. Ooh, I don't know if you can hear me. They could reach out to us. That's part
yes.
of our voter education program that we've been rolling out for the past 6 months now. They could reach out to us. We'll connect them to Minister Micah, and where we can't get the answer, we will connect them we will research the answer and send them the answer. So we've had trainings on the level of national and state to prepare us to do this. So we are prepared for any questions and any assistance people may need. I wanted to piggyback on what Minister Micah said about we have to encourage people to come out to vote. It is a right. And it
Absolutely.
is a right lately that you hear that may be challenged by other parties. So we need to remind folks that our ancestors died for us to be able to exercise this rights. So that's why we avail ourselves to escort people to vote. We will help them fill out the paperwork to register, help them to understand the ballot, which was part of the voter education format that Minister Micah has been holding, because some people do not understand that you're not just voting the front page, you got to flip the back and vote the back as well. So yeah, we're here to answer a lot of questions.
What's
And
on
when
the back?
we say that again.
I said, what's on the back of the ballot?
Ooh, Micah, you want to get that one? There's a lot in the back of the ballot this year.
In Westchester, I guess it's different in different counties and cities and
Yes,
stuff like that, but for
yes,
particularly here in the 95th
New York,
Assembly District.
that Prop One
yes.
is and we the NAACP's official position is to vote yes on Prop One, as we support. We want a country that protects its citizens, and
Mm-hmm.
that means all citizens. Um, and I think, one thing that I think about respect, and is
Mhm.
really what a lot of the basis of the work that we do is, that folk want to be able to live, exist, how they are choosing, and to be respected when they do so. Um, and when folk make decisions because they don't respect how one has decided,
Mhm.
they'll do things to say that I don't have to respect you, and it is, simply trying to put in place in law that, you can't violate my respect, and if you do, that there are some ways for me to address that. Um, and I think it's just I don't need you to agree with me, but if you do violate that, I need the government to be able to step up for me.
Right.
And I think
Mhm.
that's really what we're doing, is to create a framework that allows people to address their concerns, because we currently don't have a broad enough framework um, that
Yes.
respects
I
all
mean, right
people.
now the Constitution has certain protections included in it, but there are
Right.
many more protections in New York state law than there are in the actual state constitution. So this would actually enshrine what's already in state law into the Constitution for protections that have been in place for many years for maybe for classes of people, but not for everybody. And
Mhm.
this kind of expands those protected classes of people.
Mhm.
So,
So I'm
is
gonna
there
circle
anything
back.
else? Yeah.
I'm gonna circle back to the hotline, because I had a
Yes.
chance to do the Googles.
Yes.
Um, the election hotline website, if you ever want to put an online form, there's also a phone number, but the website is electionhotline.ag.ny.gov, and that's the New York State Attorney General's office, and that's electionhotline.ag.
We also have a phone number. I'll just throw that out there, which is 1-866-390-2992. And that is, again, that's the Attorney General's hotline for any concerns that you might have about election that you believe might not be right, or you might just have a question. That's the
Right.
election hotline. Or to report any untoward actions, anything that you think is not right. If people want to get involved in the NAACP locally, how do they get involved with your branch or other local branches? And then we're going to have to wrap up. So just about the end of our program.
They could visit our website, www.peekskillnaacp.org. They could also call me 914-382-4797. And I invite you to
Okay, I
come
hope you get a
join
flood of phone
us.
calls.
I hope so. I'm looking for membership. I'm looking for
Me too.
people who want to volunteer their time in the community. And I don't know if Minister Micah has
Absolutely.
anything else to say. I know we have 1 minute, but no?
Our general body meetings are the field library or virtually, so you can go to the website and see the link for those. But they're the fourth Tuesday of every month, typically with the exception of August. So
Thank you so much. I'm just
your
going to wrap it up
membership.
because I got to get in there under that 30 minutes. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today, and for everyone for listening. Please don't forget to vote in this upcoming election. Early voting starts, as we discussed, October 26th and runs through November 3rd. Election day proper is Tuesday, November 5th. Make sure to flip over your ballot and look at the propositions on the back and make your vote count. And thank you again so much to the NAACP of Peekskill. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you
Thank
for your work,
you. I'm
Dana.
all in.